it play and call it work.
Matthew's Thoughts.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to another episode of Matthew's Thoughts, the show where you get to have my thoughts. I know it's really not obvious by the title that would actually be what the show is all about. Remember, this is different than the sit and talk in that I only cover one thing. It's kind of more of a review or maybe major topic discussion. So if you want me to cover a certain topic or review, make sure you leave that in the comment section below. Today I'm going to be talking about Angels of Death. Now this is going to be a series of a few videos because there's so much to talk about in here, including all the detachments and all the new psychic powers. But I'm only going to talk about things that I've really played in battle reports. And so as I play more battle reports with this, then I'll be able to do more of Matthew's Thoughts. Because if there's one thing I don't really like to do that much, it's to really judge how something is going to be based off of just reading it. Now, that doesn't mean I never do that. Of course I do, just like everybody else. But I prefer to formulate my opinion based off of actually trying it out and seeing how it works on the battlefield, which is what I have done with a couple of detachments in here. So today I'm going to talk about the new Salamanders Detachment and Salamanders rules. Starting with Salamanders, of course, not because of alphabetical order like you might think, but because obviously they're one of my favorite chapters. And contrary to popular belief, is not what we actually based the MiniWarGaming chapter off of. This is the Sentinels of the Forge chapter, and the colors are based off of our color scheme from our logo, not anything to do with the Salamanders. It was after the fact that once people were like, hey, that kind of looks like Salamanders, that when I started looking at Salamanders lore, that I realized that they were in fact my favorite chapter. They just seem to be the most good out of all of them, but also the coolest out of all of them. So that's right, all you Ultramarines players, the Salamanders are the best. Except when I don't want to use the Salamanders detachment, and then this is no longer Salamanders, this is Ultramarines, or Iron Hands, or Imperial Fists, or whatever I want. So that's the advantage of having a custom color scheme. Even though they're green, they could technically be an Ultramarine successor chapter. Because you can't tell me that every single Ultramarine successor chapter is blue, or some variant of blue. That is just not the case. That's right, I'm talking to you, random YouTube commenter who complains when I use these as Ultramarines just because I want to win, even though I'm really just doing it because I like variety, and I don't have every single color scheme painted up for my Space Marines. So, but we're going to talk about Salamanders anyways because they kind of look like it, and because they are my favorite, as I've already said. Now, the new Salamanders Detachment, which is called the Flameblade Strike Force, was really cool in that two things, actually. One of the core choices was the Stormlance Battle Demi Company, which is the one where everything must start in Rhinos or Razorbacks. And on top of that, when they fire their weapons, they're allowed to run, or flat out, or turbo boost. And if they do so, they can actually re-embark into a vehicle, which allows you basically to move up, disembark, fire, and then, as long as you're not too far away from the access points, make your run move and get back in. And the funny thing is, this felt very not Salamanderish to me, because I've been playing the 30k Salamanders and really trying to stick to a theme, which is, no, we don't want to be like all those fancy Eldar players. We want to actually be more slow and purposeful. But I got that in 30k, so when I play it in 40k, I don't mind having other tactics, like actually using drop pods and things that are fast, like bikes. So it's more just taking advantage of the Salamanders' flamer usage or master-crafted weaponry on their characters. And so I decided to use this in the battle report, which you can see. I'll put the links to the two battle reports that we played, actually specifically the one to the Salamanders one in the video description, where I use this one, and I wasn't thinking it was going to be that good, namely because one of the squads is a Devastator squad, which doesn't really make sense that you have to start it inside of a transport. It's a Devastator squad. And on top of that, why would you want to move, shoot, and then re-embark? You want to sit still and shoot at targets. But it really lends itself well to grav cannons, even though I wish it lent itself well to other weapons, because I know everybody kind of hates, they love to hate grav weapons just because of how ridiculously powerful they are. But at least with this one, when they get out, they're only firing 12 shots instead of 20 shots, and that is a big difference because it's salvo 3.5. Every other type of weapon would have to snap fire if they got out, shot, and got back in. And in case of some of those weapons, like plasma cannons, they wouldn't even be able to fire them at all. So that just wouldn't make sense. Now, I know you could just have a squad of missile launcher guys or last cannon guys or plasma cannon guys start in Razorback, move up, disembark, get into a good position, and then from turn 2 on, you can start firing. But I felt that that gave up a lot of the mobility that this army had to offer. So it was really cool that that Demi Company is one of the core choices. Of course, the other core choice is the Battle Demi Company. And then it has a lot of the things from the original Space Marine book. But here's the really cool thing. You got 3 advantages in here, all 3 of which are actually really good. First, I gotta remember the names of them, Vulcan's Teachings. If this detachment is your primary detachment, your warlord has 2 warlord traits, one of which must be from personal traits. And that is really good if you're going to do a close combat warlord, which in the case of the battle report that you'll see, I didn't really want to do. I wanted to focus more on a shooting army, which is why I took the Stormlance Battle Demi Company. So in this battle report that you'll see, it wasn't that big a deal, but still being able to have an extra warlord trait is pretty awesome. The personal traits do lend themselves more to your warlord being super awesome and super cool and killing stuff in close combat, and so you kind of have to keep that in mind if you want to really take advantage of that. But that's not all. This detachment also gives you Scorched Earth, which is add 1 to the strength of all flamer weapons used by salamander models in this detachment. Now, there's a bit of a debate. What is a salamander model? Now, if you just read the rules as written from the Space Marine Codex, it basically says that whenever they're talking about salamanders models or models that are salamanders or etc., they're talking about models that have the chapter tactics special rules from that specific chapter. And so what that means is if I want to say a salamander model, technically I mean a model with a chapter tactics salamander special rule, which means your land raiders, your vindicators, and your other vehicles except for dreadnoughts wouldn't technically get this. Now there's some debate on that because of the iron hands, which give the, I believe it's it will not die, to vehicles, iron hands vehicles. It seems strange that in the old codex all vehicles got it and now the new ones only dreadnoughts got it. On top of that, the detachment is considered to all be from the same chapter. Now we know that they're all Space Marines, but why is this Land Raider not considered to be a Salamander's Land Raider? So some people would argue that they are in fact Salamanders, and that's important because your vehicles, such as land speeders, could have heavy flamers. In fact, a land speeder with 2 heavy flamers, if it got the +1 strength, would become a land speeder with 2 strength 6 AP4 flamers, which is ridiculously awesome, especially, well, the AP4 is more useful against armies such as the Tau and Eldar and Necrons and stuff, but still, the strength 6 can make a big difference against certain ones, especially Necron warriors. But heck, even against Space Marines or Space Marine equivalents, even against Terminators, just getting those extra wounds, wounding on 2s instead of 3s, can make a huge difference when you get that land speeder in there, which is nice and fast. But that's an argument, and right now we've chosen to err on the side of caution, which is that we don't allow vehicles without the chapter tactics special rules to gain benefits from their chapter, although I'm really on the fence of allowing Iron Hands to do that, just because it really feels like they're supposed to be able to. So +1 strength to all the flamers, though, even if you just have that on your guys and your bikes and your dreadnoughts, is a pretty big benefit. Your regular flamer on your tactical guy is now a strength 5, AP5 flamer, and your stern guard with a heavy flamer, that's right, those are strength 6, AP4 flamers, and they could take 2 of those bad boys. And any combi flamers that they bring would be dousing on strength 5. So drop them into the drop pod, boom, you got strength 5 flamers. Now obviously those are expensive, not the stern guard are expensive is what I mean, obviously not tacticals with flamers. But it really allows you to have fun with them. On top of that, they still get to keep the original chapter doctrines of the Salamanders, which is, of course, that flamers get to reroll to wound or armor penetration. Or fail to wound and armor penetration, I should say. And that's pretty darn awesome when you get +1 strength and essentially shred, although it's even against vehicles as well. So that makes your use of flamers that much more important with salamanders, and it kind of seems like if you're not bringing flamers, then you're not really playing salamanders. Lastly, they have the not one step back, which is funny because this one I didn't think I would use when I brought the Stormlance. It is that if your unit does not move in the movement phase, they actually count as fearless until, how long does it last for? Until the start of its next movement phase. Now, this had a very interesting effect that I did not predict. And that is, I was thinking, well, my guys are always going to be in Razorbacks and Rhinos. They're going to be jumping out, shooting, and getting back in. But that wasn't the case. In fact, what happened was I combat squatted, spoiler alert, by the way, I combat squatted my tactical squads, and I had the ones with the special weapons and one of the combat squads riding around in the Rhinos, and the other combat squad stayed out after the first turn, of course. And the 5-man combat squad, which is bolters, would basically sit on an objective and just be fearless. On top of that, if any of your squads get pinned, then if they don't move in the movement phase, they technically don't move in the movement phase, and they become fearless at the end of the movement phase. And if at any point when you're pinned, or you've gone to ground, you become fearless, you stand up and you no longer suffer the ill effects of it, which means you won't be snap firing. So you pin a squad of salamanders from this detachment, they won't have to snap fire. They won't get to move, but they won't have to snap fire because at the end of their movement phase, they become fearless, which means by the shooting phase, they no longer have any of the ill effects of pinned. And that's actually a pretty big deal and happened quite a bit in the battle report that we did. In fact, this rule, which I thought was going to be totally inconsequential because I was playing a mobile force, turned out to be pivotal in more than one way. So these things, the extra warlord trait, the +1 strength of the flamers, and the fact that they're fearless when they don't move is a huge boon to the Salamanders Detachment. And the nice thing is you can almost play this like a Gladius Strike Force because you can just bring the Battle Demi Company. You just can't do the double Battle Demi Company and then get free transports. But let's face it, nobody should be getting free stuff in their formations. Heck, we should all be paying points for formations to make them more balanced, which, that's a whole other discussion for another of Matthew's dots. And so that's really cool. The Salamanders Detachment was really cool. On top of that, and I closed the book, so now I'm going to have to flip all the way to it again. There we are. On top of that, they get new warlord traits, some of which were really neat. Some are boring. Your warlord gets it will not die. Or if the mission uses variable game length, you can always choose to add 3 to the d6 rolls. So basically, you can just choose to make it continue. One cool one is your warlord gets +1 strength. The other one is your warlord gets Feel No Pain 2+ against wounds by flamers. Now all salamanders get 4+ Feel No Pain against wounds caused by flamers already. And then never give up. Your warlord and any salamander units within 12 inch have stubborn and can reroll failed leadership tests. That's very, very all-inclusive. Forge Master is really cool. Any master-crafted weapons that he has, he can reroll all the 2 hits, not just one. And of course, we all know that in Salamander's Chapter Doctrines, every character can automatically mastercraft any of their weapons for free. Sorry, one of their weapons for free, as long as it's not a chapter relic. Relic blades are still allowed, just not chapter relics. And we have some cool relics of Nocturne. Basically, the Drake Smiter is a super awesome thunder hammer that you can make 1 attack at D strength instead of just regular attacks, and it's mastercrafted. You have Nocturne's Fury, which any of your guys who can take special weapons can take. You can only have 1 of them in your army, of course. So basically, any guy like a tactical marine, it's a flamer that's strength 4, AP 4, and it has the option of becoming Torrent if he stands still. Now that part, but for 20 points instead of 5 points, upgrading your flamer to AP 4. If you combine it with a detachment, it's basically a heavy flamer because that strength 4 becomes strength 5. So there is your way to get a heavy flamer into your tactical squad, is by bringing Nocturne's Fury. It costs 20 points instead of what is heavy flamer's 10 points or 15 points. It's not 20, I know that much. And we got some cool stuff. Salamander's Mantle, that's brought directly from 30k. The bearer gets Eternal Warrior. The Tome of Velcona is pretty cool. The librarian that equips it knows the Molten Beam from the Pyromancy, and it doesn't cancel out his Psychic Focus. And on top of that, this is probably the most important one, is he gets +1 to the strength of all Pyromancy Witchfire powers. Now that's one that I want to use and didn't get a chance to yet, but I'd love to try that. Automatically knowing Molten Beam, which is I think the strength 8 AP1 Melta, so it becomes strength 9 AP1 Melta, and Beam, and then getting +1 strength to all of your Witchfire powers and Pyromancy. That could make the Pyromancy stuff pretty redonkulous. And then finally, we've got 2 more. Vulcan Sigil for a chaplain. Once per game, everybody in his unit gets +1 attack. That's kind of cool. And then a 10-point Wrath of Prometheus, rapid fire, strength 5, AP 4, mastercrafted, rending, 30-inch range weapon. That's kind of neat. That's only 10 points, so why not? So some cool extra artifacts for them, some cool warlord traits, although overall the warlord traits there, I kind of rather use the ones from the main rule book than them. But the detachment, definitely an A+. It was very enjoyable. I even think it would be really useful just as a regular Battle Dummy Company rather than a Stormlance as well. So really enjoy the new Salamander stuff. I've put a link in the video description to the battle report where I played them, so you can go and check that out right now. Stay tuned for more of Matthew's thoughts. Make sure you leave a comment about your thoughts of the Salamanders, as well as any future topics you would like me to cover, whether it's reviews or just some juicy topics about miniature wargaming. Thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.